I should have known something was wrong the moment she brought me the pen. Not the usual blue ballpoint from the kitchen drawer, but one of those sleek, expensive ones, like the kind lawyers use. "Just a quick signature," she said. "It's nothing really, just paperwork." She smiled like she always did when she was in a hurry to get her way, her nails tapping lightly on the folder. I was still in my robe, the kettle whistling behind me, the dog scratching at the back door. "Kevin's already signed," she added, which was supposed to make it easier. Like his name on a line erased all my doubts. I sat down at the table. My hands were dry that morning, knuckles rough from arthritis, and the pen slipped a little as I picked it up. She slid the papers toward me and kept talking. About the electric bill, some new rebate from the city, or maybe it was insurance. She wasn't clear. "Just makes things simpler," she said. "You don't want to deal with all that bureaucracy." And she was right, in a way. I didn't want to. At 72, I'd had my fill of forms and numbers and call centers. I still paid bills by check and wrote grocery lists on paper. I trusted too much. That was my problem. Always had been. "Do I need to read it all?" I asked. "No, Martha. It's boilerplate, just utility stuff. Legalese. It's standard." I looked at the signature line. My name was typed there. Martha A. Hale. Neat and official. I signed it. That was last Thursday, a week ago today. The funny thing is, nothing changed right away. I made tea. She left in her spotless SUV, waving once as she backed out of the driveway. I took the dog out, sorted laundry, watched an old episode of Matlock. The house was quiet. Familiar. Mine. At least I thought so. But the next morning, the first tremor hit. The mail came, and with it, a thick envelope addressed not to me, but to Jessica Hale. That wasn't unusual. Bills came in her name sometimes. But this one was from a law office I didn't recognize. I put it aside. Later that afternoon, I caught her in the kitchen, opening the letter. She looked up when she saw me. Just a flicker in her eyes, something like surprise, then calm. "Oh, it's just a confirmation about the documents," she said. "All went through." "What documents?" She rinsed her mug. "That paperwork from yesterday. It's all filed. No worries." I nodded, but something in my stomach shifted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way she said filed, like something had been closed, finalized. The next day, I pulled the papers out of the kitchen drawer. I read every word, and then I read them again. I had not signed a utility transfer. I had signed a deed transfer. I had given her my house. Everything. Every corner of this home that Harold and I had poured ourselves into for 42 years was now, on paper, hers. Not shared. Not co-owned. Hers. I sat at the table for a long time after that, staring at the dog curled up under the radiator. He didn't know. Neither did Kevin, probably. He'd never bothered with paperwork. He let Jessica handle things. So had I. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something cold and slow began to settle into my bones. I had made a mistake, and it would not be the last. The walls didn't feel like mine anymore. That morning, I stood in the living room, holding a coffee cup I'd had since the 80s, and looked around as if I were a guest. The throw pillows Jessica insisted on, too bright, too stiff, were arranged in perfect symmetry. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, sharp and citrusy. Nothing like the lavender I used to keep in the linen closet. Even the rug had changed. The old wool one Harold and I bought in Asheville, gone. Replaced with something modern and cold. "You're standing funny," Kevin said from the hallway. He was adjusting his tie, already late. "You feeling all right, Mom?" "I'm fine." "You sure? You look, I don't know, Distracted. I opened my mouth to tell him about the papers, the deed, the truth that clawed at my throat. But then Jessica stepped into the room. Her heels tapped across the hardwood like punctuation. "She's fine," she answered for me. "Probably just tired. We've been trying to get her to take it easy." Kevin nodded, already halfway to the door. "We'll talk later, okay?" And then they were gone. The house grew quiet again. I wandered through the rooms after that. Not cleaning, not rearranging, just observing. The photos on the wall were mostly theirs now. Jessica's family, smiling on beaches, at ski resorts, in cities I've never been to. A single frame with Kevin as a boy remained on the hallway shelf. I picked it up. He was 7 there, missing his 2 front teeth, holding a fishing rod with Harold crouched beside him. We caught that trout on a cold October morning. Kevin didn't even want to touch it, cried when it flopped in the grass. Harold had laughed, told him, "You've got to face the messy things, son, or you'll never really grow up." I put the photo back and went outside. The backyard hadn't changed. Not yet. The apple tree we planted our 2nd year of marriage still stood, its bark split from age, branches stretching wide over the grass. I touched the trunk. Beneath the surface, roots ran deep, just like the years I'd given this place. Christmases, thunderstorms, illnesses, birthdays, mourning, laughter. Everything that made a life had happened here. Now it was paperwork, just paperwork. That night, Jessica served dinner like a hostess at a gallery. Salmon in parchment, some kind of couscous I couldn't pronounce. The plates were square, the conversation sterile. "I spoke to a contractor about the upstairs," she said, sipping her wine. "We'll need to redo the insulation before winter. And if we're going to make the attic livable, we should do it properly." "The attic?" I asked. She blinked. "Well, yes, for when we start thinking about options." "What options?" Jessica gave a tight smile. "You've been saying the stairs are hard. We just thought, why not plan ahead? The attic's quieter, cozier, more private." "You mean for me?" She didn't answer. Kevin cut in. "We're just thinking long-term, Mom. It might be easier for everyone. 1 level, no stairs, less noise." "You want me to move into the attic," I said. Jessica looked at her plate. "It's still your home, of course. We're just trying to make it work for all of us." I wanted to scream, to shove the plate off the table, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded. Because now I understood something very clearly. This wasn't my home anymore, and they weren't asking. The tea was cold by the time she brought it to me. I was sitting in the sunroom, the one Harold and I built in '93 with our own hands. He wanted a place to read the paper. I wanted to grow herbs on the windowsill. Now there was no paper, no herbs. Just Jessica's aloe plants in white ceramic pots, lined up like a row of judging eyes. She set the cup down without looking at me. Didn't ask if I wanted honey, didn't sit. Just turned and left, her heels clicking back down the hallway. I didn't drink it. It was peppermint. Her favorite, not mine. A few minutes later, I heard the front door open and close. Kevin had taken the boys to practice. Jessica, I assumed, was out running errands, or at one of her wellness appointments she never explained. I stood and walked back through the kitchen. There was a note on the counter in her perfect looping script. "Please don't forget the laundry. Sheets from the guest room need washing. Also, dishwasher didn't run last night. Can you check it?" "No, thank you. No, if you feel up to it. Just a list, like I was the hired help." I took the note and crumpled it slowly, not out of rage, just to feel the paper give way beneath my fingers. The guest room. That used to be my room. After Harold passed, I moved back into the master bedroom for comfort. But when Kevin and Jessica decided to combine resources and move in, because it made sense financially, because Jessica's promotion meant a longer commute and they'd all benefit from intergenerational living, I'd agreed. I let them rearrange things. I let them talk me into moving into the smaller bedroom, the one facing the street, because it got better light. I let them bring in their furniture, paint over the walls Harold once chose with care, replace my curtains with gray blackout panels. I let them, because that's what you do when you believe your family loves you. But little things had changed since that signature. The door to my room now closed quietly on its own, but yesterday it was locked. By mistake, Jessica had said. The boys must have been playing with it. But the look in her eyes told another story, a warning. Last week, I used to move through this house freely. Now, I waited before going into rooms. I knocked. I stepped softly. I apologized for existing. At lunch, I opened the fridge and found a sticky note on the milk. For the boys. I took out a yogurt instead. That afternoon, I heard voices from the backyard. Laughter. The boys were on the swing set. Jessica was on the phone. I stepped onto the porch quietly, like I didn't want to interrupt. She was pacing with one hand on her hip, the other holding her phone close. She won't make a fuss, she said. She never does. It's like she doesn't even know what she signed. Legally, it's clean. The house is ours. The boys laughed in the background. I stepped back inside, slowly closing the door behind me. The cup of cold tea was still sitting on the side table. I picked it up and poured it down the sink. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry. Not yet. Because I finally understood. They weren't waiting for me to leave. They were expecting me to disappear. You don't mind, do you? That's how she said it, standing in the hallway with her arms crossed and that particular smile she used when something was already decided. Behind her, Kevin was silent, hands in his pockets, eyes down. My son always avoided conflict by pretending it wasn't there. Jessica gestured toward the stairs. We've been thinking. It makes more sense. We need the guest room for Kevin's office. His company's going remote permanently, and he needs a professional space. You understand. I didn't answer right away. My hands were still damp from washing dishes. I wiped them on my apron and looked up the stairs. The attic door hadn't been opened in years. The last time I was up there, I was storing Harold's winter coats and a box of Christmas lights that stopped working in 2006. It's quieter up there, she continued. You'll have more privacy. We'll bring up a space heater, and Kevin can help you move the dresser. The boys can carry boxes. And the bathroom? I asked. Jessica blinked. Oh. Well, you'd still use the one downstairs, of course. So, up a steep staircase every night with arthritic knees, down again in the dark if I needed the toilet, and back up alone to a room with sloped ceilings and no insulation. And somehow, this was for my benefit. Kevin finally spoke. It's not forever, Mom. Just until we figure out what's next. What's next? Like I was a problem to be solved. That evening, while they were out at a dinner with Jessica's sister, I pulled the attic ladder down and climbed slowly, one hand gripping the railing, the other steadying my breath. The attic smelled like cedar and dust. The floor was rough wood, the ceiling low and slanted. A single bulb hung from a chain in the center, its light dim and yellow. Boxes lined the edges. Christmas decorations, old photo albums, Harold's fishing gear, a few things of mine that I'd forgotten we'd even saved. There was no carpet, no windows, no dignity, I sat on an old footstool and listened to the house creak around me. I could hear the wind push against the roof, hear the faint hum of Jessica's air purifier from the hallway downstairs. It felt like being buried before you're dead. I stayed there a long time. When I came down, my legs trembled from the cold and the climb. The next morning, she was already in the kitchen, stirring oatmeal. She didn't look up when I walked in. "We'll move your things tomorrow," she said. "Kevin's free in the evening." "I haven't said yes," I replied. Jessica paused, then turned to me with a patient smile. "Martha, I understand this is an adjustment, but the house needs to work for all of us now. You signed the transfer, remember? We're just trying to organize the space logically." Logically. I stood there, staring at her. For a moment, I saw the girl she once was. The first time Kevin brought her home, all bracelets and perfume and fake kindness. I tried to like her. I really did. But she never liked me. To her, I was an inconvenience attached to her husband, a package deal she hoped would one day come with inheritance, and I'd handed her the keys myself. I left the kitchen without a word. That afternoon, I called my old friend Nora. She picked up on the third ring. "Martha," she said, "it's been ages." "I need to ask you something," I said. "Something about property law." There was a pause, then a quiet, sharp inhale. "What happened?" I sat down at the dining table, the one I'd eaten at for 4 decades, and for the first time since Harold died, I let the fear show. "I think I signed my life away," I whispered. "And I think they're getting ready to carry me upstairs like an old box they no longer want to see." That morning, the envelope was already in the mailbox when I went out to feed the dog. A thick, cream-colored one with a gold-embossed return address. Law Offices of Baxter and Hill. I didn't open it right away. I stood in the yard, the grass cold beneath my slippers, and watched the sunlight hit the apple tree. The wind moved through the branches the way Harold's hand used to move through my hair, soft but deliberate. The world looked the same, but I knew better now. Inside, I set the envelope on the kitchen table, next to my half-eaten toast. My fingers hesitated on the flap. I already knew what was inside. The dog nudged my leg. "All right," I said softly. "Let's find out." The letter began politely, as they always do. "Dear Mrs. Hale," then corrected itself halfway through the paragraph. "Dear Ms. Jessica Hale." By the second sentence, my hands were trembling. This letter serves as formal acknowledgement that the property located at 421 Maple Avenue has been successfully transferred to Jessica Hale, as per the notarized deed signed and submitted on the date of... I stopped reading. There it was, in black and white. My house. My land. Every nail Harold hammered, every wall I painted, every dollar of mortgage I paid off, officially belonging to someone else. For a long moment, I just stared at it. The words blurred. My vision swam. Then everything went quiet. Not silent. Quiet, like the world had turned its back. I walked to the living room and sat down in Harold's old recliner. I pressed my palm to the armrest, the worn patch where his hand used to rest, and whispered, "You'd tell me I was a fool, wouldn't you?" But Harold wasn't there to scold me. Only the hum of the refrigerator answered back. When Kevin came home that evening, I met him at the door with the letter in my hand. "Kevin," I said, "we need to talk." He looked tired, already unbuttoning his collar. "Can it wait, Mom? I've had a day." "No," I said, louder than I meant to. "It cannot wait." He frowned, dropped his keys on the table. "What's this about?" I handed him the letter. He scanned it quickly, his expression tightening. Okay, this isn't as bad as it looks. Not as bad? I laughed, a dry, unfamiliar sound. I signed over my house, Kevin, my home, without realizing it. Technically, he said, rubbing his neck, it's still your home. You live here. Nothing's changing. That's not what your wife said. He looked away. Jessica's trying to make things easier for everyone. Easier, I repeated. You mean easier for her? Mom, please. No, you listen to me. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. I built this life with your father. I scrubbed these floors until my knees gave out. I didn't raise you to watch your mother be pushed out of her own house. He sighed heavily, the way people do when they think you're being dramatic. You're overreacting. Jess didn't mean any harm. She thought you understood what you were signing. We all did. I stared at him then, my only child, and saw not malice, not cruelty, but something colder. Indifference. The same quiet neglect that had crept into his eyes over the years, one missed phone call at a time. I folded the letter neatly, even though my hands were shaking. If that's what you both believe, then I suppose I've done my part. He looked confused. What do you mean? I mean I'll find out exactly what I've signed, I said, and what can be undone. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Nora on speakerphone. She had her reading glasses on, her lawyer's tone sharp and clear. Martha, she said, I've seen this before. If the deed was notarized and recorded, it's legally binding. But let's not panic yet. There might be grounds to challenge it. Fraud, coercion, lack of informed consent. I'll need to see the document. I can bring it tomorrow. Do that, she said. And Martha, don't sign anything else. Not a receipt, not a grocery delivery, nothing. When we hung up, I felt lighter, if only for a moment. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to be erased quietly. The next morning, Kevin didn't speak to me. He passed me in the hallway, phone to his ear, muttering something about quarterly reports and deadlines. He didn't look up, not even a nod. It was easier for him that way. Pretend I was just part of the furniture now. Something to navigate around. Jessica, on the other hand, was cheerful. Too cheerful. She set a mug down in front of me, green tea, her favorite, not mine, and gave me one of her tight, efficient smiles. Morning, Martha. Did you sleep okay? I didn't answer. She sat across from me and folded her hands neatly on the table. So, Kevin told me you got the letter. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was still in her workout clothes, leggings, a pink zip-up jacket, hair pulled back too tight, face scrubbed clean. She didn't wear makeup around me, said she didn't need to perform. And? I asked. She blinked. And? We should talk about what happens next. It's a big transition, I know. But we want you to feel comfortable. Safe. You want me out of the way. Jessica's smile froze. That's not fair. No? I tilted my head. You moved me into a smaller room. You talked about the attic before the ink was dry. You put your name on my deed, and now you're offering me tea like we're girlfriends. Her mouth tightened. This is still your home. No, I said. It was. Past tense. She exhaled through her nose, like she was the one being patient. Look, you signed the deed voluntarily. There's no undoing that. I didn't trick you, Martha. I was clear. You said it was just paperwork. And it was. Legal paperwork. You could have read it. You could have asked questions. I trusted you. Silence fell like a stone between us. She stood up. I think we need some space today. Maybe take a walk, get some air. I've got a conference call, and the boys have their friends coming over later. I didn't move, just sat there, hands wrapped around a mug of tea I didn't ask for. She left the room without another word. Around noon, I went out to the porch and sat in Harold's old rocking chair. It creaked the way it always had, like the sound of memory itself. The breeze smelled like dry leaves and chimney smoke. I watched the mail truck pass without stopping. For the first time in 40 years, there was nothing addressed to me. I stayed outside until the sun dipped low and the porch grew cold. The boys came home with their backpacks and noise, and I stayed invisible, like I'd learned to do. At dinner, my plate was smaller, a side salad and a roll. Jessica said she was managing portions, but I noticed her second helping. I noticed everything. Kevin chewed in silence. He looked tired, but not guilty. He never did guilt well. It required too much self-reflection. After the dishes, I went to my room, the smaller one, the one with the squeaky door Jessica still hadn't fixed, and sat on the edge of the bed. I opened the drawer in my nightstand and pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of bills I'd paid for this house, the new roof in Ozofor, the plumbing overhaul in 11, the loan I'd taken against my pension to fix the foundation in 17, all in my name. And now, none of it mattered. Before bed, I took out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I hadn't dialed in years. Donna. Donna and I used to volunteer together at the church thrift shop. She was a paralegal once, sharp as a knife and twice as quick. She picked up on the second ring. Martha Hale, is that you? Donna, I need a favor. There was a pause. Tell me everything. I did. By the end of it, she was already texting names. I know someone. She used to work on elder law cases. Quiet, but brutal. Let me make a call. As I thanked her, I felt something strange. It wasn't hope. Not yet. It was heat. Low, steady, coiled in the center of my chest. I might have given away my house, but not my name, not my fight. Nora met me at the diner just off the highway, the kind of place where the booths were cracked and the coffee came thick and bitter. She slid into the seat across from me with a manila folder and a calm, deliberate expression. She didn't bother with small talk. You brought the papers? She asked. I handed her the copy of the deed Jessica had printed for me back when she still pretended to be polite. Nora unfolded it carefully, put on her glasses, and began to read. Her mouth pressed into a flat line by the second page. She used a general warranty deed, she said. Not a co-ownership, not a life estate. You gave her full title. I didn't know. Nora nodded. She made sure of that. The language is dense on purpose. Look here. Grantor hereby conveys all rights, title, and interest. That means no conditions, no retained life interest. It's clean. Cold. I stared at the edge of the table, the place where the laminate peeled up like it was tired too. Can we reverse it? Not easily. She took off her glasses. We'd have to prove you signed under duress or without full understanding. That's hard to do unless we show a pattern. Financial abuse? Manipulation? I didn't say anything. Just let her words settle into me like bricks. Nora leaned in. But listen to me. You still live in that house. You still have rights. If she tries to force you out, we can file for elder exploitation, report the deed as predatory. She might own the building, but you're not powerless. I looked at her. You think I let this happen? No, she said softly. I think you trusted the wrong people, and now it's time to stop doing that. We talked for another hour. She asked for documents, bank transfers, bills I'd paid, texts or emails that might show the truth. I had plenty. Decades of proof that I was the one who'd kept that house standing. When I left the diner, the air felt colder, but I walked taller. That evening, Jessica was in the kitchen labeling plastic bins: holiday, donate, attic. I watched her for a moment, arms deep in my linen closet, sorting what she hadn't earned. "What are you doing?" I asked. She turned, startled, then smiled, like it was nothing. "Oh, I'm just reorganizing. It's chaotic up there. I figured while we're moving your things." "My things aren't going to the attic." Her smile slipped. "Martha, I'm staying in my room." There was a long pause. She put down the bin lid, slow and quiet. "That's not your call," she said. "Not anymore." And there it was, the truth, spoken plainly. I didn't respond. I just walked past her, through the living room, out the front door, and into the evening. I needed air, space, a reminder of who I was before this all began. Down the street, Mrs. Landry was watering her porch plants. She waved. I waved back. She didn't know anything was wrong. To the neighbors, everything looked fine. I stopped walking when I reached the park. The benches were mostly empty. I sat down near the oak tree where Kevin used to climb as a boy. The same one where he broke his arm trying to jump down too fast. I remember cradling him in the ER, his little fingers clutching mine. "Don't let go," he'd said. And I didn't. Not then. Not for years. But maybe that had been the problem all along. I held on when I should have made him stand on his own. I gave when I should have said no. I trusted people who smiled while they emptied my life, drawer by drawer. Not anymore. When I got back to the house, Jessica was gone. Probably driving the boys to piano or taekwondo or whatever filled the afternoons now. Kevin was upstairs, door closed. I walked into the living room and turned on the lamp. Then I picked up the envelope from Nora and laid it on the coffee table. The cover letter was short, formal, unmistakable. It explained, in legal terms, that I was challenging the deed under suspicion of elder exploitation. I wasn't sure what scared Jessica more, the lawyer's name or the fact that I had finally used one. Either way, tomorrow she'd find it waiting. Let her read it over her green tea. She found the letter before breakfast. I was in the kitchen, buttering toast, when I heard the sharp intake of breath from the living room. Not loud, just enough to make the air shift. A pause, followed by the rustle of paper. Then silence. Jessica stood in the doorway a moment later, the envelope clutched in her hand like it might explode. "What is this?" she asked. I didn't look up. "Toast. Do you want some?" Her heels tapped across the tile. "Don't play games, Martha. You hired a lawyer?" I spread jam on my slice, calm as I could. "I did." "You're challenging the deed?" "I'm challenging the way it was handled," she scoffed. "That's ridiculous. You signed it freely. You were lucid. No one forced you." "No one had to." I turned then, met her eyes. "You knew exactly how to make me trust you." Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to me speaking like that, not without apology laced behind it. "I have rights," I said. "You may own the title on paper, but this is still my residence, and I'm not leaving, not to the attic, not out the door, not until I decide." Jessica folded her arms, the letter crumpling in her fist. "You're trying to make things difficult." "No," I said, setting my plate down. "I'm making things honest." She didn't respond, just turned and walked out, fast. Her footsteps were uneven, less confident than usual. Later that morning, Kevin found me on the porch, tying up the rose bushes. "Mom," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Can we talk?" I wiped my hands on my gardening apron. "Now you want to talk." He winced. "Look, I didn't mean for things to get messy." "Didn't you?" "I thought it was all agreed. Jessica said you were fine with the transfer. Did you ever ask me yourself?" He looked down. "No." We stood in silence a moment. The wind picked up, shaking the branches overhead. "I trusted you," I said softly. "Not just with my house. With everything." "I know," he murmured. "No," I said. "You don't." He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like he wanted to say something meaningful, something that would fix things, but couldn't find the words. Instead, he said, "So what happens now?" I looked out at the street. Now we see what's left when the dust settles. Inside the house, Jessica was making calls. I could hear her voice through the vent, clipped, controlled, anxious beneath the surface. She mentioned Nora's name twice. Then elder abuse. Then false accusations. She was nervous. She had reason to be. I spent the afternoon gathering documents, utility bills, receipts, letters, proof. Everything I'd paid for, fixed, or maintained. The burden was on me now, not just to undo what was done, but to build a case strong enough that they couldn't gaslight their way around it. In the process, I found something else, a manila envelope in the hall closet labeled JH, long-term plan. Inside were printed emails between Jessica and a realtor, drafts of listings, mortgage applications, notes about liquidating property assets, and then, in her handwriting, consult lawyer re-eviction protocol, elder status complications. I sat on the edge of my bed, the envelope in my lap. They weren't just planning to move me upstairs. They were planning to move me out. And soon. That night, I locked my bedroom door. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted them to hear it click. The lock clicked louder than I expected. Thin door, old hardware. But it made the point. The next morning, the tension was thick. Jessica didn't speak a word at breakfast. She sliced strawberries with surgical precision, dropped them into bowls for the boys, then swept out of the kitchen without even looking at me. Kevin avoided eye contact, too. He buttered his toast so slowly, it was like the act alone might stall time. When the boys left for school, he finally spoke. "Do we really have to turn this into a battle, Mom?" I folded the newspaper carefully before answering. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" He sighed. "I think you're blowing things up when we could have worked it out." "We?" I repeated. "There was no we. There was a plan, and I wasn't part of it." His jaw tightened. "I didn't want it to be like this." "But you let it be," I said quietly. "That's the difference." Later that day, I met Nora at her office. It was a small building on the edge of downtown, tucked between a bakery and a hair salon. Inside, the furniture was plain, the walls lined with books and legal printouts, and the heater hummed like it had been there since the 70s. She greeted me with a firm nod and handed over a printout. "We've got a preliminary affidavit drafted. It outlines your contributions to the property, the pattern of dependency, and the circumstantial pressure you were under when you signed." I scanned it slowly. My life, reduced to bullet points and transaction records. But it was all true. "We're filing under undue influence and lack of informed consent," Nora explained. "We're not saying you were incompetent. We're saying you were manipulated. That Jessica presented the document with misleading context, used your trust and age as leverage. Will it hold?" It might not win outright, she admitted, but it puts pressure on them. They won't be able to act like this is over. I nodded. Good. Nora sat back. You sure you want to keep living there while this plays out? I know a temporary housing contact if you need one. No, I said. If anyone's leaving, it's not going to be me. Back at the house, I found the front door unlocked. Jessica's car was gone, but Kevin's was still in the driveway. When I stepped inside, something felt off. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, as if the walls were bracing for something. On the kitchen table was a note. Neat, centered, no salutation. Martha, I've spoken with legal counsel. We believe your actions constitute harassment and bad faith. Please cease legal threats immediately. This is our home now. Let's try to find a peaceful path forward. Jessica. I read it twice. Then I laughed, bitter and low. Harassment. They'd stolen my house and now claimed to feel unsafe because I dared to speak up. That evening, I made dinner. A full one. Roast chicken, carrots with thyme, mashed potatoes with cream, just like I used to make when Kevin was a boy. The smell filled the house by 6. I set the table for 4. Jessica walked in first. She froze when she saw the spread. What's this? Dinner, I said, placing the last plate down. I figured we could all sit, like a family, talk. Kevin hesitated in the doorway. Mom, please, I said. Sit. They did, stiffly. The boys were upstairs, too quiet. Jessica cut her chicken slowly. Kevin kept his eyes on his plate. I poured myself a glass of water. I found the envelope, I said. Jessica didn't look up. What envelope? The one with your long-term plan. The realtor, the notes, the word eviction underlined. Her fork froze midair. Kevin glanced at her, then at me. You went through our things? They were in my closet, I said. In a house you claim is yours, but treat like mine when it's convenient. Jessica's mouth opened, but I held up a hand. I'm not asking for apologies, I said. I'm letting you know I've seen everything. And I'm done pretending. I stood up, picked up my plate, and carried it to the sink. You want to take something from me? I said over my shoulder. You'll have to fight for it. And I promise you, I'm not the one who should be scared. They stopped speaking to me after that. Not entirely. Just enough to make it felt. No more morning greetings. No more, do you need anything from the store? Not even eye contact. I had become a shadow in my own house, the quiet thing that filled space but didn't belong in it. Jessica moved through the rooms like I was air. She whispered on phone calls when I was nearby. Closed doors that had always stayed open. The boys, confused and quiet, didn't know where to look when we crossed paths. Kevin started staying later at work. At least that's what he claimed. I didn't press. The silence suited me, in a way. It gave me room to think, to plan. Nora called that Thursday evening. Their lawyer sent a preliminary response, she said. They're threatening to countersue for defamation if we proceed. I let that sit for a moment. Do they have grounds? I asked. Only if you're lying. And you're not. Her tone softened. This is pressure, Martha. They're trying to make you flinch. It's textbook intimidation. Then they don't know me very well. She laughed. Apparently not. That night, I started gathering the things I knew mattered. Not clothes or jewelry. I didn't have much of that. But the things that said I had lived here. The baby book I kept for Kevin. Harold's Army medals. My mother's sewing kit. The hand-painted teacup I never used. Because it reminded me of Sundays. Of peace. I put them in a box under the bed. Not because I planned to leave, but because I wanted to remember what was mine. Friday morning, the shift became official. Jessica knocked on my door, only once, then opened it before I answered. "We've had enough," she said. No preamble, just those 4 words. I sat on the edge of the bed, folding laundry. Of what? This tension, the hostility, the accusations. "You mean the truth?" Her eyes flashed. "We've spoken to our attorney. You're becoming a legal risk. The boys are uncomfortable. Kevin and I are constantly on edge. This isn't sustainable." "So you've decided?" "We think it would be best if you found alternative arrangements," she said, calm but firm. "We're giving you 60 days to transition out. After that—" "You'll what?" I asked. "Change the locks?" Her silence answered for her. "I built this house," I said. "I paid for every pipe, every tile, every nail. I raised my child here, buried my husband from this address, and you want me gone because I had the nerve to stand up? It's not personal, Martha." "Of course it is." We stared at each other. Then slowly, I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. "Let me tell you something, Jessica. You are not the first person to mistake kindness for weakness. But I promise you, when you push a woman like me into a corner, she doesn't crumble. She sharpens." I walked past her, down the hall, to the kitchen. I opened the cupboard, pulled out the dusty emergency binder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were copies of my will, my bank statements, my life insurance policy, Harold's discharge papers, and the power of attorney I'd granted Kevin in 2018, before I knew what kind of man he'd become. I took it out, placed it on the counter. Then I picked up the phone and called Nora. "I want to revoke it," I said. "All of it. Every shred of control he has over my affairs." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more." We scheduled an appointment. I slept easier that night, even with the house humming like a taut wire around me. In the morning, Kevin was already waiting in the kitchen, coffee untouched, hands clasped. "Mom, can we not do this?" "We're already doing it," I said. He looked older than he used to. Grayer. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "I don't want it to end like this." "You should have thought of that before you gave your wife my house." His face fell. "I'm still your mother," I said. "But you don't get to take everything and expect me to smile about it." He opened his mouth, closed it. Then he said the thing that would stay with me for a long time. "Dad would have told you to let it go." I froze. He meant it as a weapon, a final jab. But instead, I smiled. "No, Kevin," I said quietly. "Your father would have told me to fight." And I am. It was the sound of sneakers on the stairs that broke the quiet. Not heavy like Kevin's, not sharp like Jessica's. Light, careful, uncertain. I was in the sunroom, folding towels, when I heard the pause outside my door, the soft knock. "Grandma?" Ethan, my oldest grandson, 14, all elbows and 2 long limbs, hair that always looked like he'd just woken up. "Come in, sweetheart." He opened the door halfway, then stepped in, hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket. "Can I talk to you?" I smiled, though my heart tightened. "Of course. Sit." He dropped onto the armchair across from me, legs sprawled. For a while, he didn't say anything, just looked around the room. At the faded photos on the bookshelf, the crocheted blanket draped over the back of the chair, the dog-eared books I still hadn't returned to the library. Then finally, "Are you really leaving?" I folded the last towel slowly. "That's what your parents want." His brow furrowed. "But this is your house. I didn't answer. I heard them talking, he said, eyes on the floor. They think you're making things hard on purpose, that you're being difficult. I smiled faintly. And what do you think? He looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw it. The confusion, the hurt, the beginning of doubt in the things he'd been told. I think, he hesitated. I think people forget you were here first. I reached out, rested my hand on his knee. You know, when your dad was your age, he built a birdhouse out of scrap wood in the garage, painted it blue, crooked as anything. It's still in the shed, tucked behind the ladder. Ethan blinked. Really? Really, I kept it. Because things made with love matter, even when they're not perfect. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, I don't want you to go. I don't want to go either, I said softly. But sometimes, when people take something from you, the only way to keep your dignity is to stand your ground, even if it means standing alone. He nodded, slowly, like he was still figuring out what that meant. Are they mad? He asked. Yes, I said. But being angry doesn't make them right. He looked at the blanket on the chair, picked at the corner of it, like he used to when he was smaller and sat beside me during storms. Can I help? He asked. I blinked. How do you mean? I don't know, he shrugged. Carry boxes. Go to the lawyer with you. Tell the truth if someone asks me. I felt a lump rise in my throat, unexpected and sharp. Just keep being kind, I said. That's more help than you know. He stood after a minute, and I did too. He hugged me quick, shy, then pulled back. If you go, he said, I'll come visit, even if they say I can't. I smiled. I'll make pie. Blueberry? The only kind worth making. After he left, I stood for a long while, staring out the window at the street. The maple tree across the way had turned to fire. Red, orange, gold. The kind of color that makes you stop mid-step and just breathe. That night, I slept without locking the door. Not because I stopped being cautious, but because I remembered I wasn't completely alone. Sometimes a single ally is enough to hold the line. It was a Saturday. Quiet, gray, the kind of morning where even the birds seemed to sleep in. I took my time getting up, made oatmeal the old way, on the stove, slow, with a pinch of salt and cinnamon. I was still in my robe when I heard the sound. Not a knock, not a voice. A click. Then another, like metal being turned gently, decisively. I stepped into the hallway and froze. The front door was open. Kevin stood on the porch, holding a small tool set. One of the boys' backpacks lay at his feet. Beside him stood a man I didn't recognize. Thin, clean-shaven, clipboard in hand. Kevin? My voice sounded strange in my own throat. He turned, startled. Then his face settled into something neutral. Too neutral. Hey, Mom, you're up? I heard the door. What's going on? The stranger looked at Kevin, then back at me. We're just doing a quick security upgrade, ma'am. New locks, new codes, for the kids' safety. I walked closer, robe brushing the hardwood. No one told me. It was a last-minute decision, Kevin said quickly. Jessica found a deal on a smart lock system. Thought we'd get it done before the weekend filled up. I looked at the stranger. His shirt had a company logo on the chest, something bland and corporate. He was already removing the deadbolt. Stop, I said. Leave it. He glanced at Kevin. It's okay, Kevin said, voice tight. She's just surprised. I said leave it. The man stepped back. Slowly. Kevin exhaled. Mom, it's not like that. Then what's it like? He looked away. We need more control of the house. It's a safety thing. The boys come home alone sometimes. Jessica wants them to have their own access codes. You've forgotten to lock up a few times. It's not personal. It's always personal when you change the locks. Martha. Jessica's voice came from behind me. I turned. She was standing in the hallway, fully dressed, keys in hand, face composed, like always. Let's not make this a thing. It's already scheduled. You're replacing locks on a house you stole, I said. At least have the decency to admit it. The installer shifted awkwardly. Ma'am, he said, do you want me to stop? Jessica's eyes flashed. No, go ahead. She's not the owner of record. That did it. I stepped back, heart pounding. I didn't yell, didn't plead. I just walked into my room and closed the door. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. The drill, the scrape of metal. The quiet thud of the old lock hitting the floor. When it was done, I didn't go out. I waited. Hours passed. Mid-afternoon, I tried the front door. Locked. No key worked. No code I knew. They hadn't even given me one. I knocked. No one answered. I tried again. Louder. Nothing. The dog barked inside, muffled, restless. I stood there, sweater pulled tight around me, watching as a neighbor jogged by, unaware that the woman in the house she'd waved to for 20 years had just been locked out like a stranger. Eventually, the door opened. It was Jessica. She held it only part way. Everything okay? You locked me out. I told you we updated the system and didn't give me access. It must have been an oversight. She didn't move. May I come in? I asked. She hesitated, then stepped aside. I walked in slowly. The house smelled like fresh paint, some project she'd started in the hallway. My shoes clicked against the clean floors. I felt like a trespasser. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes wide, listening for every sound, every step, every door. Around 2 a.m, I got up and opened my old cedar chest. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was the small envelope I'd saved from Harold's lawyer all those years ago. His final instructions, handwritten, never opened since his funeral. I read them slowly, and in his careful, looping hand, one sentence stopped me cold. If anyone ever tries to take what's yours, and they do it with smiles, don't answer with kindness. Answer with truth. By sunrise, I had packed a small bag, not because I was giving up, but because I needed space to move. War doesn't start with fire. It starts with silence. And they had just lit the first match. The suitcase was old, wheels uneven, handle stiff from disuse. I packed only what mattered: a week's worth of clothes, the documents Nora asked for, Harold's letter, and the photograph of Kevin at 7, grinning through 2 missing teeth. I left the house just after 8. No one stopped me. Jessica was in the kitchen, earphones in, eyes on her laptop. Kevin's car was gone. The boys were at school. The dog barked once from behind the baby gate in the laundry room. No one said goodbye. Outside, the wind had picked up. The maple tree in the front yard shivered, its leaves gathering in little piles along the driveway. I stood there for a moment, just looking at the house. 42 years. Every season, every fight, every joy, inside those walls. I didn't cry. Nora picked me up in her car, a quiet silver sedan that smelled faintly of peppermint and leather. She didn't ask questions, just reached over and gently touched my hand. I booked you a short-term apartment, she said. Not far, furnished, close to my office, just until we finish the filing. I nodded. Is that all you brought? It's all I need. The apartment was small, 2 rooms, white walls, laminate floors, a sofa that creaked when you sat too quickly. but it was mine, at least for now. The windows faced east. The light in the morning was soft and full. By noon, Nora and I were sitting at her office again. "This is what we're doing," she said, laying out the plan like blueprints. "The claim is elder financial exploitation. We're adding breach of trust, misrepresentation, and seeking temporary injunction to freeze any property sale. They won't be able to touch the house until this is resolved." "Will it hold up?" She looked at me. "If it doesn't, I'll still make sure they never sleep easy again." I smiled, tired. That's enough. Over the next days, things moved fast. I signed papers, wrote statements, made copies, gave interviews to legal aides. Donna came by with groceries and a hug that almost made me cry. She brought me a radio. "For the silence," she said. "I know how it can crawl on you." I turned it on every morning. Classical music. Low. Just enough to remind me I was still here. Jessica emailed me once. Short. Cold. "Martha, we're sorry things escalated this way. We believe this separation will give us all clarity. Please forward any legal correspondence to our attorney. No greeting, no sign-off." I didn't respond. Kevin texted. Just once. I didn't want it to go this far. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it. I spent my evenings with a notebook, writing down what I remembered. Conversations, dates, small slights I'd once ignored. I documented the groceries I paid for, the repairs I arranged, the time I watched the boys when Jessica was at her retreats, every thread that wove into the fabric they'd tried to cut me from. And every night, I read Harold's letter again. Not because I needed his advice, but because his handwriting reminded me I was loved once, without condition. Then, one morning, Nora called. "They've responded," she said. "What did they say?" "They want to settle." Quietly. I closed my eyes. "And?" "They're offering you a separate property title with a life estate clause, meaning they can't sell or evict you until you pass. But it would still name Jessica as the full owner after." I exhaled. "It's a leash." "Yes," Nora said. "But it's also leverage. We can push for more. This is their first crack." "Then we keep pressing." "That's what I hoped you'd say." That night, I sat by the window in the little apartment, watching headlights pass. The world outside kept moving, unaware of the battle happening in that quiet house on Maple Avenue. But I was no longer part of that house, and they were no longer part of my fear. I wasn't coming back with bags. I was coming back with rights. I returned on a Wednesday, not to stay, not yet, just long enough to remind them I hadn't disappeared. Jessica opened the door, surprised. She stepped back instinctively, like she thought I might force my way in. "I'm here for my things," I said. She hesitated. "What things?" "Not the ones you packed in bins," I said. "The ones you didn't notice." She blinked, then moved aside. Inside, the house felt colder than I remembered. Not the temperature, the atmosphere. Like the walls themselves had absorbed the silence and started echoing it back. I walked past the new rug, the new photos, the smell of citrus cleaner. I went to my room. Not the room, not her room. Mine. The one where Harold's cedar chest still sat at the foot of the bed. I opened it and pulled out the envelope with the last few things I hadn't taken. My wedding ring, the quilt my mother sewed the year I was born, and a small framed photo of Harold holding newborn Kevin. Jessica stood in the hallway, arms crossed. "We didn't throw anything away," she said, voice clipped. "If that's what you're assuming." "I'm not assuming anything," I said. "I'm remembering." She exhaled. You could have stayed, Martha. If you hadn't, if I hadn't stood up. She looked away. I read your lawyer's offer, I continued. Life estate. No sale until I die. Sounds generous if you forget how we got here. I didn't write it. But you lived it. She didn't respond. I stepped past her into the hallway. I've rejected the offer. What? You heard me. I'm not negotiating for a corner of my life. I'm taking it back. Her mouth opened, incredulous. You have no grounds. I have 42 years of receipts, I said. I have statements, witnesses, records. I have your handwriting on a page that says eviction protocol. I have your voice on a call Kevin didn't know I heard, saying you owned the house now. I have everything I need. She swallowed. And more importantly, I added, I have time. You're the ones rushing. You're the ones hoping I'll fold before the holidays. I won't. You think you'll win? I already have, I said. I'm not hiding. You are. From behind us, footsteps. Kevin. He stopped halfway down the stairs, eyes landing on me, then on Jessica. What's going on? I'm collecting what's mine, I said. You could have called, he muttered. I didn't need permission. He looked tired, thinner. Like the weight of the choices they made had finally begun to rest where it belonged. I got your lawyer's email, he said. Good. We're not the villains you think we are. Maybe not, I said. But you were never the heroes either. I picked up my bag. Quietly. No drama. Just done. At the door, Jessica spoke again. What do you want, Martha? Really? I turned. Recognition, accountability, and peace, in that order. Then I left. Outside, the sky was soft with late autumn light. I stood on the porch and looked once more at the apple tree. Its branches were nearly bare. Only a few gold leaves clung to the tips, shivering in the wind. I wasn't coming back to the past, but I wasn't letting it be rewritten either. They had tried to make me small, but now they had to face the truth. I was still standing, and I wasn't finished. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of filings, of back and forth letters between attorneys, of silence punctuated by tension. 6 weeks of walking the long way around pain so I could reach the center of it and stand there without flinching. Nora handled most of it. I watched, read everything, signed what mattered, refused to sign what didn't. There were delays, requests for mediation, thinly veiled threats that further pursuit may damage familial relations beyond repair. They didn't realize that damage had already been done, quietly, carefully, by their own hands. And then, one morning, I received a letter. The envelope was heavier than most. My name written in formal script. Inside, an agreement. Terms outlined in clean, lawyerly language. But the meaning was simple. Jessica relinquished title. I would retain ownership. Not a life estate, not a lease. The deed would return to my name. Kevin had signed it too. No apology, not in words. But sometimes surrender is the apology. I didn't cry when I read it. I didn't cheer either. I simply closed the letter, stood from the kitchen table in the small apartment, and said aloud to no one, I told you I wasn't finished. I moved back 2 days later, not to reclaim old routines, but to remind the walls that I had survived. Jessica was gone when I arrived. She and Kevin had rented a place across town, closer to her office, near a better school district, or so she claimed. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer help. I didn't carry bitterness into the house. Only quiet. The furniture was still there. The gray blackout curtains. The aloe plants. The rug she chose. I left it all in place. I wasn't interested in erasing her. I was only interested in existing fully again. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, not peppermint. I stood in the living room, sunlight hitting the floor just right, and I said, "Welcome home." No one answered, but the house shifted, just slightly, as if it remembered me too. Kevin came by a week later. No Jessica, no boys, just him. He stood on the porch, like a man who had once belonged somewhere and wasn't sure if he still did. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. He walked slowly, looking around. "You kept the rug." "I didn't come back to start a war," I said, "only to end one." He nodded. We sat at the table. He didn't know where to start. I could see it. So I helped. "You did a cruel thing," I said. "Maybe not with malice, but with neglect. You let someone rewrite what was mine and convinced yourself it was practical." He flinched. "But you also signed it back, without a fight." "I didn't want to," he admitted. "I know." Silence again. Then he asked the one thing I never expected. "Do you hate me?" I looked at him. My son. My once baby boy with scraped knees and hands that clung too tightly when he was scared. "No," I said. "But I don't trust you. That will take time." He nodded. It was more than he deserved, but I offered it anyway. We spoke for a while. Not about the past. Not about Jessica. Just about the boys. Ethan was reading Steinbeck. Henry wanted to learn chess. When he left, he hugged me. Careful. Hesitant. I didn't stop him. After he drove away, I sat alone for a long time. The quiet was different now, not empty. Whole. The kind of quiet that says, "You earned this." The following Sunday, I baked pie. Blueberry. I left the door open, just a little. Ethan came by in the afternoon, walked in like he used to. No fanfare, just ease. He sat at the table, fork in hand, eyes bright. "It smells like you again," he said. I smiled. It never stopped. When he left, he kissed my cheek. The next morning, I planted new flowers along the walkway. Tulips. The ones Harold always said looked like tiny cups catching light. And I breathed. Not like someone surviving, but like someone restored. If you've read this far, maybe you've known something like it. Maybe not this exact story, but the feeling of being pushed aside, of signing something without knowing it cost your place, your voice, your name. Maybe they told you it was just paperwork. Maybe you were taught not to make trouble. But let me say this as clearly as I can. You are not trouble. You are the truth. And if they think silence means surrender, let them learn what I did. That the quietest women carry the heaviest truths. And sometimes we don't need to shout. We just come back and stand where we belong. If this story meant something to you, share it, leave a comment, or just sit with it a while. That's more than enough. And so are you.